It's now my honor to introduce to you Princess Castleberry. She is the CEO of Castleberry Global and a professional keynote speaker who partners with world-class leaders to cut through the noise and solve real challenges faster and for good. Her Live, Lead, and Build Leverage framework uncovers hidden behaviors and equips leaders to make smarter decisions, reduce burnout, and resolve misalignment and conflict so they can focus on lasting growth. She has been featured at TEDx Detroit, in Fast Company magazine, and other publications across North and South America. Please welcome Princess Castleberry.
So today we are going to talk about risk. Every single leader, every person, every human, every child has to take risk. Now, a risk is the possibility of harm or loss to something of value in pursuit of opportunities that add more value. So when you think about what leadership is, think about what leaders are essentially there to do. Add and increase value and build out capacity. Now, you learned a little bit about my company and what we do, but every world-class leader is responsible for adding that value. And so risks like conflict, disengagement, decision fatigue, feelings and sentiments of lack of belonging, those are the things that hold organizations back. And we're talking today about equity, right? So we're going to examine what a leader's role is in helping to build equity and how we solve some of the most common challenges that plague businesses faster and for good. Now, like equity, when we think about these simple concepts around leadership, we know that leadership is about building and creating access, power, and sustainable positioning. And what does that mean? Everybody has worked to aspire to a certain role, right? We've all worked there. We've worked our way up many, many ladders. But when you get to that point of ascension, we start to believe that we've made it, right? So anybody ever got to that point where you've graduated, you got all the certificates, and you say, "Mama, I made it," right? And you think that's it, and you think that you're magically going to get to the top, and things are going to be smooth from there. You're going to have the resources, the time, the energy, the team, and all the support that you need. Nothing goes wrong at the top. Okay, I'm here to tell you, I've been to the top and I came back down. I was like, take me back to Detroit where people are cool. Take me back, because when we think about how women show up in this world, there are some industries like finance, hospitality, media, where women play an outsized role. We have outsized influence in our purchasing power. We have outsized decision-making capacity, right? We're the ones that move the markets, really. Women hold 80% of the world's purchasing power and influence over those decisions. So when we think about that, we have to put under a microscope those industries where women continue to show up and play these outsized roles, but we're not getting our just due. We have to look at the places where women are being leveraged, but being left out, okay? So many places and spaces. So when we get to these opportunities where we start to grow and start to develop, the road can just get really rocky. And I want to talk to you about the first time I experienced that rocky road. And I'm really grateful that it happened very early in my career. I was 24 years old when I was still working in my first career. And when I started right out of college, I started at the world's largest insurance brokerage firm. It was here in downtown Detroit, and I had that "Mama, I made it" moment because I had grown up on the West Side, born and raised, and had gotten this job that I really had aspired to. I was finally going to learn how to be a risk manager, right? That was like everybody's childhood dream, right? You wanted to be a risk manager? Okay, it was just me. And I'll never forget the day that I was in the boardroom. I was in the boardroom with my boss, She was one of the only women executives in the company. So she's somebody that I naturally looked up to because, frankly, I didn't see a lot of women leading in the organization. And we were in a boardroom together, if you can imagine, and we were prepping everything, making sure everything was just so, passing out all the board reports, making sure we knew where the CEO was going to sit, and everybody was going to be positioned. And so as I'm watching her build this room, I'm taking notes in my mind because when we see women, that's what we do. We want to echo them, so we're watching every move she makes. And it was in that moment that my boss turned around to me and she said, "You're interesting. How did you learn about this career? Because you don't look like a risk manager." I was stunned. I stopped, just like now. I was shaking. And I just couldn't move. And I was so still. And what was really a matter of seconds literally felt like hours. I was literally stuck because I was heated, I was angered, I was nervous, and I was confused above all because this is a woman I really admired. And all these questions were racing through me as I was just stuck in that moment. And I finally got the courage to open my eyes and just take a deep breath because I had to quell my anger. And I looked over and she was so casual. She was still just going about her business. And honestly, it was the moment that I saw her moving about very gracefully, very casually, very free, that I really noticed how stuck I was. And I said, "Oh my goodness. Has anybody ever been stuck like that? Anybody ever had that moment?" I see the head nods. I was just so quiet. It's not normal. And I was so stunned. And I don't know, something came over me because I noticed how fluidly she was moving. And I said, "What did you mean by that?" And she looked over and she was stuck. And I knew what that meant because I had just experienced it. She was stuck. She was stuck in her words, her thoughts. And then I was like, what is this? And so I started to move a little bit more fluidly, almost like we were exchanging energy, right? She was stuck and I was free. And I said, "What did you mean by that?" And she looked at me. She said nothing. And we just had a moment of silence. And we both went back to just the work of the day, putting together the boardroom. And that moment, that was a moment that shaped my life. I got so much energy out of that moment because I realized that her words literally meant nothing. Now, I know a lot of you sitting out in the audience might be thinking like, "Princess, girl, she meant something by that." Who's thinking that she meant something by her, what she said, right? Because you've had those experiences. Now, here is the reality. Do you know? Were you there? See, I just made you do something with my overly dramatic, slow pause, carried out story. I threw you into my moment. Now, that was a true story, but I told that story that way because I know how to trigger people. I know how to trigger people. I'm cooler than that. I'm way more casual than that. Skip that story. Now you get a little bit of taste of the real me. Here's the reality. Those moments like that happened to each and every one of us. She, in that moment, was the leader. I was the student. I was the new employee. I was 24 years old. She was a woman probably about the age I am now, a glorious 45. And she was a leader in the organization, tasked with adding value and building power and building capacity in the organization. And in that moment, she had diminished my capacity. Or had she? Or did she simply ask a question? Did she simply ask a question that triggered something deeper within me? Okay. I learned an important lesson in that moment, that when you lean into a trigger, because I was the one stuck, bothered, and interrupted, and paused in that moment, when you lean into that and you do not examine, A, what that person meant by it, and you don't examine what's going on into your body, you give away power, you give away the access, you give away your position, and you are putting everything at risk. And I learned how to stop doing that at that moment. Every time you have an opportunity to grow into leadership, which is what we're all aspiring to do, we're here to talk about equity because it sounds like a good thing, right? We're half the population. We should have half the jobs, more than half the money. I've got a husband. I want it all. And so he knows. And so the reality is, though, as you grow, growth only exposes what's hidden inside, okay? As things grow out, any women in here ever had their roots grow out? After you had your hair dyed? It exposes the truth, okay? Yeah, you got blonde and then the truth comes out as you experience growth, doesn't it? Okay. And it's because there's always a reality behind the scenes. So I'm going to ask everybody here a fundamental question. Are you ready to solve real challenges? The real challenges that cause women to shrink. The real challenges behind inequities in our society. Are you ready to solve those challenges faster and for good? Not just for good as in never having to deal with them, but for good, for humanity's sake. Are you ready to do that? Because if you are, I have a model. I created this model that we use at Castleberry Global in all of our programs that we lead with different leaders and organizations. And it's called the Live, Lead, and Build Leverage model. Now, you see a picture of it up there. Go ahead, get your cameras out, take a picture of it. It's going to age very well, trust me. But in the time that we have today, I have time to share two of the essential skills. Two of the skills that we teach in this model is first that you identify the truth in your triggers. See, that moment where I was stuck, that was not just a moment that was about what she said to me, the fact that she said something that questioned my belonging. That's not what it was. What she activated inside of me was the fear that some people that I love and hold very dearly have put inside of me. I was born and raised here, and I had learned that I had to work twice as hard as my white male counterparts. I had learned that I needed to be at work early and stay late. I had learned all these things. I had seen the news, okay? I had witnessed what was going on in society. So I was triggered by my own beliefs, my own thought systems, and the things that were poured inside of me. The other skill that we have to talk about is how we manage and identify forms of chronic stress and decision fatigue in ourselves, okay? These are two very serious risks. And the reason why we start with that first one, baby, is because the truth is in the trigger. If you get to the heart of what is really triggering you in those moments when you get stuck, because raise your hand. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. We've had those feelings, right, in those moments where we had to take that hard pause. The truth is in the trigger, and if you dig deep enough, you will find it, okay? Here's another thing. I'm going to age very well. It's going to be in the upcoming book. Take a picture of that. Be the first. In the interest of the time that we have, we won't have a time to pull out the couches and lay everybody down and to do a therapy session here. But I want you to recognize that we all experience triggers. We experience personal triggers, like the ones that were holding me back in that moment when I thought I needed to have a conversation with my boss and I really needed to have a conversation with my parents. Or I thought I was having a conflict with a colleague when really I was having an internal struggle, okay? It's not that what people do on the outside doesn't matter. It's just that the only boss that matters in any given situation is the boss in the skin that you're born in. I was the boss of that moment. I had the right to choose. And I was so proud that I did not lean into my anger. I didn't swing on the lady. I didn't hit her, you know what I'm saying? No, I wasn't going to do that because I knew what was at stake. I knew what was at risk. But there were a whole host of personal triggers I was dealing with. And lest we forget the global triggers, all the isms, the phobias that we all encounter one way or another. It's very important that as you walk through life and you traverse through your journey, that you identify your personal and your global triggers. And then those workplace triggers or those environmental triggers, if you're running your own business. These are things that plague us when we're trying to get from one side of the stage to the next. These are the truth, okay? I see 4 behaviors over and over in leaders. Now, I did spend 22 years of my career as an enterprise risk manager, so I've been around the block. I've seen a thing or two. I know a thing about loss, and I know a whole lot about opportunity and revenue building and all the things that companies want to do, building up the bottom line, connecting with clients. But I've seen leaders exhibit 4 behaviors consistently that drain the investments, that take down the team, that erode the collaboration and all the things that were talked about today that we need and that we can promote as women. We have time to talk about 2 of them today. The 2 that we're going to focus on are toxic drive and what I call fixed gear leadership. Now, toxic drive is this concept that we talked about it earlier, how good it feels. Samantha mentioned this, how good it feels when somebody tells you you can't do something, you can't accomplish something, right? And then you go out because you know in your heart you can do it and you were made for this and you got the plan for it and the support and you're going to go do it anyway, right? Now that defense that kicks up inside of you, that will that pushes you forward, is called ego defense. That is a naturally occurring phenomenon in our psyche. And so ego defense kicks up, but it can turn to what I call toxic drive the moment where you latch onto it. Because what you have essentially latched onto is external validation. Now, one of my favorite people, one of my favorite super producers is Pharrell Williams. He had a song with Jay-Z years and years ago, one of my favorite hip hop songs called So Ambitious. And the chorus goes, I'm testing my real hip hop fans. The motivation for me was them telling me what I could not be. Oh, what? Y'all gonna leave me hanging? The motivation, do I need to sing it? The motivation for me was them telling me what I could not be. Oh, well. Oh, well. Thank you, Ace. Thank you, Ace. That's what I'm talking about. I thought I was in Detroit. Y'all making me feel like I'm somewhere else. I don't know. But toxic drive. The motivation for me was them telling me what I couldn't be. Why do we latch onto permanently? See, we know why we do it initially. We do it initially because of ego defense, a naturally occurring psychological phenomenon. But when you hold on to your toxic drive and you think you're going to build a business and a workplace culture off of it, guess what? Nobody's going to work late nights with you because you have daddy issues, because your ex-husband told you you were never going to be anything, and that's why he was dating his secretary or whatever he's trying to do. That's never going to fly. And what happens as a leader, what happens as a woman leader, is that we burn ourselves out because we attach ourselves to an inauthentic motive. You cannot thrive off of that. It will get you started. It will rocket you off into full throttle. It will not keep you, and it will not keep your workforce in place. And the solution to toxic drive is that you take ownership and just reinvent your motive. It doesn't matter how you start. It really matters how you finish. We all know the old adage, okay? So finish differently if you started in toxic drive. No shame, no guilt. We don't need Brene Brown here telling us where we're wrong, you know. The other one I'm going to talk about is this concept of fixed gear leadership. Fixed gear leadership. Now, who is, let me see, I can find the 45-year-olds because I know who got squeaky knees and a bad back now from all that pop locking and dropping back in the 90s. It wasn't just me. I see some of my friends here. If you're of a certain age, you might remember the time when washing machines only washed clothes. Like seriously, washing machines used to have a couple of settings: off, on, hot, cold, like rinse, stop, right? That was all it was. Now, what do washing machines have today? They got like microwaves. You can put they do everything, is my point. Like you have to be, have a PhD in computer science to program all the functions of the modern day washing machine. Now I bring this juxtaposition up because when we think about the new machines are considered sophisticated because they measure capacity. They sense the load. The old ones are off, on, hot, cold. Very, very basic. Now, when we think about what drives leadership and what's going to move equity forward, it's a sophistication. It's all those skills that we talked about, right? It's all those skills that we talked about. But here's the reality. As women, we are showing up in fixed gear mode. We show up as the head, the CEO of the company, the head of the DEI committee. We're in charge of the PTO, the PTA, the Girl Scouts. We're the head deaconess, because we don't want to be deacons anymore. We're deaconesses. And we show up in a leadership capacity everywhere we go. And we do not know how to meet the moment. We do not know how to measure our capacity and meter ourselves. And we burn ourselves out so much because of fixed gear leadership. If the hallmark of sophisticated leadership is that we know how to build capacity in ourselves and others, and that we know how to measure ourselves, why are we performing and basically showing up like simple machines? Can't do that. Again, as we wrap this up, I know this went quickly. Growth will expose your triggers. Your triggers are just those moments that will catch you off guard. Personal triggers, global triggers, workplace and environmental triggers. We all experience them. But the truth is, your growth will expose each and every one of those, but it also exposes your greatest opportunities. And that opportunity is for you to unlock those triggers so that you unlock more capacity as a leader, as a woman, and as a human. Go and solve the real challenges faster and for good. I'm Princess Castleberry. Thank you.